James Reynolds. Hi, James. How are you? We're so happy and excited to have you here. As you can see, we have a whole bunch of people here, a whole bunch of fans with a whole lot of questions.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Jim, it's nice.
Yes.
It's nice to see you, and thanks for coming today. Let me ask you, how have you been holding up during the coronavirus? Are you doing the whole quarantining thing, and what's keeping you?
We're definitely quarantining. We're very, very strict in our following the rules and doing things we think will at least help on our part to prevent the spread of the virus, and trying to do some things to help people outside. We have tenants. My wife's been working very, very hard to find help for them and continuing along and making sure everybody can, in one way or another, afford to stay with us. So that's part of what we've been doing, but also outside trying to help people and raise money and concern and raise their voices. And but as far as we're concerned, we've been, in some ways it's been a gift. And if you can say that in these horrible, horrible times, because it's allowed us to be at home. It's allowed us to do things we wouldn't ordinarily do. You actually find time to read a little bit more and, of course, binge and do all those other things that you kind of put off. And, cleaning up. How many houses are clean now compared to a few months ago?
Absolutely. I'd like to go back to early on in your career. And I think one reason you've always been such a great interview is because at one time you had worked as a journalist.
I had, yes, absolutely.
You were Marine and you'd served in Vietnam. Thank you for your service. And did those experiences lead to your work with the USO?
Yeah, well, eventually. I mean, it didn't necessarily directly lead to my work at USO, although I suspect it didn't hurt. Where they helped a lot was in doing the job that I did for the USO and also for Armed Forces Entertainment. I did several tours for them. They're separate entities. One is the Defense Department. Excuse me, the USO is completely nonprofit and not part of the government at all. I don't know how many people, I think people sometimes get it confused because it's been around since World War II. And, but that really helped a lot. I found that it was very easy to find a rapport with the troops, no matter where I went, when they found out I was a former Marine. That helped immensely. And so those previous experience helped specifically with the USO in that way. But, this point in my life, I can think of places where it also just helped my life in general.
Interesting.
You worked as an interviewer.
I did.
Doing this. What are your memories of interviewing people and more celebrity people?
Well, everybody was very nice. Let me see if I can dredge up a couple of names because it's been a year or two. Jack Nicholson, a very big name back in those days. Rona Barrett. I don't know if everybody remembers Rona Barrett. Michael Douglas, way back. Gosh, there was really quite a list. And I feel terrible for forgetting this name. It just jumped in my head. Young Frankenstein, wonderful actress. Yes. Yes, she was wonderful and left us much too early. I mean, I think she was one of the great comic actresses that was ever out there. And so it's just a huge list. And so there were things I learned from being in those rooms, from being a young journalist. And Michael, you can probably understand this, that you have the same kind of, you look up to people in the same way, or you at least see people in the same way as everybody else. So sometimes you're a little odd, sometimes you're just plain curious, and sometimes you don't really care. But it was a lesson to me. And also I think because everybody was so nice. And I remember the Everly brothers in particular, who were just the nicest guys in the world, just the really wonderful, wonderful guys. And I remember to this day, one of them, and I don't know if it's Don or Phil, had on one of the best jackets I've ever seen in my life. I've always wanted that jacket, sheepskin leather jacket. I don't know where they got it, and it probably doesn't exist today, but anyway, it was pretty cool.
We see you were on The Incredible Hulk and Super Friends, Different Strokes. Do you ever catch any of the reruns?
I have.
And Super
yeah.
Friends.
Yeah, I've always forgotten. There are things I have forgotten, actually, which is kind of nice in a way. But not because of any particular reason, just time passes. But yeah, you do. I find myself flipping channels, and then I'll go, wait a minute, I think that's me. And then I'll go back and go, oh, yeah, I remember that. And all those bring back really kind of fun memories. I remember one of the first things I did out here was a children's show called Bigfoot and Wild Boy. And I played it was good because I played a soldier, and I had just gotten out of the Marine Corps not too many years before that. So I was kind of still in that mode a little bit, and which is probably why I got the role. It wasn't much of a role, but it was enough for me to go, oh, something might happen with this stuff. Yeah, it's been a long road.
When you decided to do Days, did you think it would be something long-term, and did you want to do it long-term for the stability of it?
No to both questions. I didn't. No, I didn't think it'd be long-term. I thought I had just, the Time Express with Vincent Price had just been canceled on CBS. And as what usually happens, or at least in my instance, in talking with my agents and all of that, we always when something like that happens, we kind of take a step back, look over what's going on. And I was in a fortunate position at that point in my career that, I'd been asked to do some things. And so that's what we did. And a couple of soap operas came calling, and I'd never done soap operas, so I wasn't sure. And to be honest, I really wasn't sure about the roles I was being offered. And I was still in a stage of my career where I needed a job. I had this series that was great, that would last me a while, but not forever. And so I needed work, but I also wanted the work to be of some kind of value. And so that's basically what happened with that. And then I thought, I was really excited because I got on such short notice. For whatever reason, nobody wanted to see me for the Days of Our Lives role. They wanted to see me for other roles, for other shows, but not Days of Our Lives. My agent felt that would be the role for me. And so it was really left to the last minute. They saw a lot of actors in town, and why I was crossed off the list, I don't know. A lot of people were seen before me. And I thought, well, this is great. And looking at it, knowing the history of soaps, I thought, well, maybe if I get a good year out of this, that'll be kind of good. And I'll look for a series or a movie during that year and walk out with my head held high. And here I am now, how many years later? I guess I started almost 39 years ago and left for a couple of years. So I guess 37 years later on that show. Who would have thought?
You were there for like all the big super couples and location shoots and the thrill of the 1980s. What memories do you have of that time?
It was a wonderful time. I mean, truthfully, we're in an unknown period now. We're in a period of decline, at least as far as the number of shows that are on. Certainly not as far as the quality of the shows, but as far as the number of the shows are on. And the 80s, I would think anybody would say, was the golden age of television, daytime television soaps in this country. And it was fantastic. I mean, literally you were a Beatle at times, depending on where you went. And, you'd have to run and find a car and jump in and go through buildings. And it was really, really something. It was very special. And I'm so grateful, all that agonizing over what to do and what show to do and all of this and why I'm not being called in for this. All of that turned out to be leading me down the right path. And the 80s were an extraordinary thing. And I'm so grateful to have been there then. And then really toward the end of the 80s, Abe kind of went through gosh, I don't know. I know one summer there were 30 different women that came through to sort of, I guess, audition on air for whoever become Abe's love interest. And then toward the end of the 80s, Abe and Lexi joined that super couple list.
And I remember Renee Jones was an earlier love interest.
She was Nikki Wade.
Yeah.
Nikki Wade, exactly. She was, and that was a joy. Renee was always a joy to work with. I don't think we ever had a crossword between us, and just always just wonderful, both as an actress and a professional, but more especially as a person, because it's always easier to act, or it's easier to work with people that are nice and come in with a wonderful attitude, and share things with you, and you can build a relationship, and that's very, very important. When we have to make you believe that relationship is real, and so that was I was grateful for that, and that came later. There were 3 Lexis before her that, and their short stay, or somewhat short stays, didn't have anything to do with anything really. Just somewhere in the network or in the production company, somebody decided this is not the way to go. And then when I understood that Renee was going to be Lexi and had known her, I thought, well, this. I feel a little magic in the air, and it turns out that was the case.
It must have been a big decision was it 1989-90 when you left Days and took on the role of Henry Marshall on Generations.
Yeah.
Did the network come and ask you to do that, or how
they did
the events that led to that?
Yeah, the network came and asked me, and I actually screen tested for a couple of roles on other shows. So while I was on Days for the network, and it was at a time where I probably would have left the show within a year or so anyway, just because the character was being devalued. This is before the real investment in Lexi. And so, the real strong investment in Lexi, which actually came after I came back. And the other 3 actresses had played the role before. Generations was a special moment, special shows. I've been very, very fortunate in that way. And loved playing Henry Marshall. In those days, they had to add gray to my hair, and that's not quite necessary anymore. And I love doing it. It was one of the best casts, I think, that Daytime's ever had. I think you've had more long-lasting actors come out of that cast, and well-known actors who have not only continued in Daytime, but have, I'm thinking of Christoph and Debbie, goes back and forth and does other things, but actors that have done very, very well in television, nighttime TV, and film and stage, as they were doing before. So it was really well cast, and I was so grateful to join them. They'd been on the air for a little while before I joined them, and I was very, very grateful. And they were very open in their appreciation that I came over for them. And that's always a nice thing.
I mean, the show was really gelling so much as it progressed, and it must have been all the more frustrating for that reason when they kind of pulled the plug. And was it a given that you'd go back to Days, or did that have to be worked out?
No, it wasn't a given. And let me say one quick thing about Generations is that the writing on that show was very, very tight from the beginning. It was a half-hour show, comparatively small cast, but compared to an hour show. And the writing was always very, very tight, and wonderful stories that I don't think you even see today on shows, and really well done, just beautifully done. No, it was not a given that I would go back on Days. In fact, I resisted going back on Days for a while. Not forever, obviously. But when I left, when I went up to talk to Al Rabin and said, "Yeah, I got this offer. I'm only walking 50 feet away, but I'll be 50 feet away," and he was very clear and said, "Look, this door is never closed to you. And I thought, wow, that's very nice. I didn't want to test it. I wasn't sure if I should. It's one thing to say in the heat of the moment. It's another thing to say it a year or so down the road. And so when Generations was canceled, I thought, well, once again, much like Time Express being canceled, I thought this is the time to see how everything lays out in front of me and what can happen now. And let's take a little time to think about this. And so it took a few months, actually. And Daisy called not too long after Generations had been canceled, I think just about 3 months or so, and said, would you like to come back? And so I said, well, let's see what you got, and let me think about it. And so I, talked to the people around me at that time, but much smaller team these days. I've learned that lesson. And well, yeah, absolutely. That clearly was the role I was best known for. And there's probably another one out there somewhere, but I'm going to be searching and seeing if I can reel it in. And I had been offered some pretty bad nighttime shows, a couple in particular that I won't mention, but I knew they'd last 13 weeks and they'd be gone. And I was right. Yeah. So I said, sure. Let's do this. And that's when the show began to invest in Abe and Lexi a lot more than you had seen toward the end of that first 80s run. That run was kind of a revolving door of love interests. And then in the early 90s, Renee came in and started playing Lexi, and everything began to solidify.
Do you have, he was so beloved by the entire daytime community and with his fans. Do you have memories of Christoph, and had you stayed in touch with him over the years?
Yes, absolutely. Well, Christoph, I have lots of memories of Christoph, my goodness. It's so funny, I was just thinking yesterday, actually, I remember we played a baseball game. In those days, there were a lot of softball games. If Michael, you'll remember this. And so Days, which was, we were pretty athletic. We had a pretty athletic show, a lot of athletes. I sponsored a basketball game for over 20 years. Okay. And we played in the city Burbank baseball league, and we'd play other soaps and some nighttime shows. And I'll never forget Generations. We were playing General Hospital, who also had a lot of very good athletes in those days. And we had a baseball game, went into extra innings, and somebody, and it's probably a name that's well known, but I can't think of it at the moment, hit this long, deep fly ball. And I had to run forever. First, I don't know why I was playing center field. I had no idea. But I had a lot of speed with no arms, so I don't know why they put me out there. But I ran forever. I wish their videotape had existed in those days, but made this great over the back catch. And Christoph was there almost the minute I made the catch. He jumped into my arms, said, "Way to go, Dad! Way to go, Dad!" And that's one of the many memories I have of him. And the last time I know he received the Image Award, which was a couple of years before he passed away, he dedicated it to me, which makes me a little emotional right now, just talking about it. Great guy, great, just a wonderful spirit.
Has there ever been a talk of a Generations revival? Do you think Henry survived that heart attack in the final episode?
I hope he did. Absolutely. I hope he did. He survived it. Henry was a tough man. Henry was necessary, very necessary to that show, and was a very strong family man who made that mistake. I think had Generations come back on the air, we would have spun out from that one moment, probably a couple years of story. It was a moment that was not indicative of him or his character, and how long he would have stayed invested in it. I mean, there are a lot of ways to go with that. I had thought maybe, it would certainly break up his marriage, but temporarily anyway. And I thought it was a wonderful moment for the show to go out on. But I also thought, had the show not had to go out on a wonderful moment, uh, uh, that moment would have led the show down a path that would have kept it on the air till now.
And you received your first Emmy nomination for that role, correct?
Yeah, for Generations. I was the orphan stepchild of the network for that nomination. It was very interesting. It was the only nomination the show got, which was sad. It should have been nominated for. It should have been nominated for writing. It should have been nominated with some wonderful directors. The show was very well produced, but you know, somebody had to get it. I guess I'm glad it was me, and but it was very funny going back to New York because I had no support at all. It's like everybody it was gone. So network thought it was gone. Everybody thought it was gone, and so I had to book everything myself and rooms, and it was quite. I mean, the Emmys and the ceremony, if you recall from those days, were very elaborate. I mean, you're walking over to the Radio City Music Hall. Yeah. I had to walk because everybody else had a car, but I had to walk to the red carpet and then walk some more. And it was a long red carpet. It was a long walk to get there, but it was a really unforgettable moment. I'm so grateful that I could experience it.
Were there any Days pals with you there that year? Because I know that Days wasn't always an Emmy darling either. So might not have been you knew.
There weren't, which was interesting. I believe Christoph and I hung out a bit because he had already moved to Young and the Restless, I think, by that time.
Right.
And so that was, so we and Lisa was with me and Christoph, and I don't remember a whole lot of Days people. And you have to understand, because I had to do so much on my own, that I'm sure they had obligations in places that I wasn't asked to go to. So that's probably the reason.
When Jim Riley returned to the show in 2003, there was the first kind of wave of the public and the fans knowing about financial cutbacks that were happening at shows. And a lot of the cast was let go, killed off. And it really seemed like at the time that that we're serious, and this time we mean it. This wasn't like Patch and the switched coffins where you knew, okay, they're leaving a door open. It appeared to be very definitive at the time, which is the only way the story would work.
Right.
And you got to be the first person, yay. Thanks.
That was wonderful.
Did you know, was it always the original plan? And I know Riley's not here to confirm or deny, but do you know that, was it always the original plan for everyone to come back, or was that done later? Or do you know?
I don't know. I have no idea, but I suspect that if not everyone, some people were to come back. But I don't know after all these years. That's something that all of us need to do research for the book. So we'll find out anyway at that point. But you know, as far as I was concerned personally, it was another one of those moments where I thought, well, okay, we'll see what happens. You know, with my own career at that point, because I had to be concerned about that, and then I did have one ear on what was going on at Days of Our Lives, because Renee was still there. No indication that something was going on with her or any kind of particular story there. So I thought, well, we'll see. You know, I don't know. It's daytime. People have come back from the dead since the beginning. Ma Perkins and all the way back to the old radio soaps. So that was kind of it was an interesting time, because it was a rough time for a lot of people. Believe me, there were people in that 10, I believe there were 10 altogether, who were really quite concerned, and probably justifiably so. Eventually we all did return, and thank goodness, and my thanks to whoever made that decision. But it was you know, I don't think you ever have to send messages to writers and actors about their vulnerability, directors, producers for that matter either, as far as entertainment is concerned generally. But it's done, anyway, with the assumption that, you know, if we let everybody know this, they'll know that the ground is shifting under their feet. Well, guess what? It's like a constant earthquake when you decide to be in any of these professions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going back to the Emmys, and I see your Emmy right there, the storyline that you won the Emmy for. Let's talk about that a bit, because that seems so much more topical. I mean, it is more topical than ever, even though it was done nearly 2 years ago.
Yeah, you know, I said this in my acceptance speech, that Ron gave me a gift with that story. That was his first story on the show. That was one of the most rewarded stories that the show's ever had, as far as Emmys and as far as accolades are concerned. I'm very proud of that. And I'm also very proud that my character was chosen to carry this story. And it was it remains to this moment very, very important. And a story that I'd like to see us do more, the kind of story that involves people, involves the struggles that people out there are going through every day, wrapped in the covering of what we do in daytime television. The shooting of a young Black unarmed man by the police, in this case, truly an accidental shooting, but it could not, there was a possibility it wasn't. And also what this story did that I thought was really wonderful for the time is that it unwrapped the underpinnings of many characters in the town. There were two things this story, I think, that made this, three things actually, made this story what it was. One was the timeliness of it, and that applies today. The other is that it involved the entire cast, almost the entire cast, and unwrapped the underpinnings of those characters like other people. We all as actors try to uncover what holds us up, what holds these characters up as human beings, and it did that. And I think the fact that we certainly did it in the way the daytime TV did it, but we preserved the warts, and I think that was very, very, very important. And we weren't afraid to go there and open up the closet door and see what falls off the shelf.
Mindy, are you ready to ask James the question that you put down on chat?
I would love to.
Hi, Mindy.
Hi, James.
You weren't just teaching my my wife's yoga class, were you? Her instructor's Mindy.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so funny. Greetings from Long Island, New York. Before my question, it's nice to see you. I just want to tell you, having days still having original episodes has just been so comforting to me.
Oh, thank you.
So I just want to tell you that first off.
Thank you.
I'm a longtime Days fan and would like to know if you think they will be bringing Theo back, and do you miss having his character on the show?
Well, the first part of that question is I hope so. I felt Theo just added so much to the show, and Kyler was endearing as Theo. And I thought, and I've said this many times before, I thought he had the most difficult line to walk than any other character on the show, because he had to play that high functioning autistic character, of which there are many out there in the world, and many of them are well-known people. You know, I think the more we learn about autism, we learn how people live with it, the various levels of being on the spectrum. And Theo was one of the people on that spectrum that, through the hard work of his parents, Abe and Lexi, and also his own hard work, into that area of being very high functioning. And Kyler was able to bring a sensitivity to it, and really a personal feeling. And many people watching felt very, very close to that character. So I hope he comes back. I would love to see Kyler come back as Theo.
Sheila, are you ready to ask James?
Yes,
Hey, Sheila, how you doing?
I'm fine. It is such
Good.
a pleasure to have this opportunity, particularly because I have been a watcher of Days since the very first week it came on TV. I watched Generations through its entire run. So
Oh,
I
happy
think
about that.
I've gotten to know your work fairly well. But
Thank you.
I also want to say how much I believe that your work has been relevant to people of color, and how good it feels to have been represented, to see people of color represented throughout the span of the time that you've been on Days and core and central. I know
Oh,
that
thank
a lot of that is due to the writers and the producers, but your work in particular has been wonderful. So my question is, regardless of what the writers and producers do, you make it real. You know, when I see you, I see people I know. But what is your most memorable moment on Days?
Wow, my most that's a very difficult. I will say it's an impossible question to answer. There are a lot of them. There are a great many. Of course, Lexi dying is one of those. And I see these as important moments, both for the show and for the character. And Lexi's death certainly fits that for both of those. I think finding out that Brandon is Abe's son and is Abe's son. We forget Brandon's out there. He's out there somewhere, and they talk all the time, and we mention it. And Lonnie is in touch with both Theo and Brandon. So, you know, Abe's kids are circulating, and who knows, Abe got around a lot back in the day, and who knows who's going to show up again. Considering I don't think he did raise Theo. So, so you know, there are those moments. The Brandon storyline, I think, was another that ended up with another Emmy nomination, and I felt actually it didn't. It was the year after, and I always thought that I got the nomination for the year before, but there was still a good story the year after, obviously. So I, you know, those are great moments. The early days when Abe showed up about 6 weeks, I think, before Roman, and the early days of Abe and Roman and Marlena and where that generation, this generation of characters and citizens of Salem showed up, and we had, as you mentioned before, those glory days of the 1980s, that magic we caught in the bottle for that period of time. They kind of merge into a bigger picture. They're basically a collage and not a moment, but nevertheless, just wonderful.
That's awesome.
And thank you, by the way, for, I'm sorry to interrupt for a second, but thank you, by the way, because one of the things that I have prided myself on and prided the show on is the constant presence of Abe on the show. Abe's the only character of color on daytime television that has been allowed to grow old, as other characters have been allowed to do that, grow older, and as other characters have been allowed to do that. And I think that's particularly important. And I've always tried to play Abe with verisimilitude, and I'm glad to hear you say that.
Oh, thank you. It really shows through. And I particularly appreciated the jumping the broom moment.
Yes.
At the wedding, I thought, when that happened, I thought, wow, somebody got it right.
Yes.
And your presence there, it was just perfect. Perfect.
Well, thank you so much. And let me say that the jumping the broom moment actually came from Sal and I almost said Eli. It's not right. Lamont. They're the ones who suggested it, and so we have to give credit to them, but also give credit to the producers for right away saying, absolutely, yes, let's do that.
Well, wonderful question, Sheila. We have another person coming up, another fan, Jerry.
I was just wondering, for you personally, who was the toughest person for you to see leave the show?
Oh, wow. Well, Renee is obviously at the top of that list, yeah, as the most difficult person for me to see leave the show. But, you know, there have been, gosh, over the years, a large number of people. Pam Roylance is a good friend of mine who left the show years ago. Valerie Wildman, who played Faye on the show when they left. You know, Ari Zucker, who fortunately came back to the show. There's been a very, very long list of people that you both know and don't know, both cast and crew, and many that you know, I still know and try to stay in touch with. Not as easy as you think. I'm sure all of you can appreciate that. But there are a lot. When Wayne left the show, that was really difficult because we had become partners. We had that relationship existed on and off screen. It turned out to be one of those moments where, you know, everything falls together. The chemistry. Everybody talks about love interest chemistry, but you know, the buddy chemistry is just as important. And I felt very fortunate with the Romans of the show, because when Wayne left and eventually came back, but in the meantime, Drake became Roman, and that turned out to be another pairing that really was perfect. And then Josh Taylor became Roman, another pairing that turned out to be perfect. So I've been very, very fortunate both in the love interest and the buddy interest stories that everything's worked out very well.
I had the privilege of meeting you when my husband and I went to a play, If All the Sky Were Paper, years ago at the...
Oh, now where was that play?
That was the Kirk Douglas Theater.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I know, a long time ago. But anyway, I know that you and your wife have a passion and love for the arts and theater, and you have done so much for the community, I mean, the country, in terms of giving back to society and children and adults in that area. And you've done so much to promote the arts. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the Fremont Center Theater.
Well, absolutely. And thank you very much for that. My wife has been extraordinarily involved in a lot of causes for the arts in this local community, actually around the world, truthfully. But she started the first Arts Council in our home, South Pasadena, where our theater is located, and that has now, over 10 years, has become one of the most important institutions in the city, if not in Los Angeles County. The theater is we are sort of open, sort of running, and it's a very difficult time, as you might imagine. We have a company called Young Stars Theater that has been leasing from us for quite some time, and they primarily do shows with young people, 18 and under, which helps keep the theater open, helps promote love of theater among younger people. And the two people that run it, Jack and Gloria, are wonderful in working with the kids, introducing the kids to theater, introducing theater to the community. And it's become very popular, and they've worked very, very hard. And we're looking for ways for them to continue. They're doing a lot of virtual teaching. They're teaching singing and dancing and acting virtually now. In fact, they have a website, the Young Stars Theater, and .com. And they're just wonderful in how they work, how hard they work. We do have plans. Before COVID came, we did have plans to produce a few more shows. We're not sure how long we'll go, given the current environment, because we can't have audience in, and that takes away the way to make money. We've never made a profit on the theater. We never intended to. We didn't deliberately not do it. We would love to, but arts is very difficult. So we had to exist on donations and hard work, and the audience that would come in to the theater, and they're no longer there. but there are a lot of creative people in this world. There are a lot of creative people within a mile of us. And a lot of those people were looking at ways to preserve and also enhance theater during this time. And people are doing that. We want to be among those. So keep your eye open. Come to LA a year from now, the Fremont Center Theater, and go to our website, fremontcentertheater.com. You'll see what we're doing. We'll see what other people are doing as far as the theater community in LA County. And you'll enjoy it. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, and a lot of hard work. And Lisa works hard on it today. She was just there this morning.
Lynn, are you ready?
First of all, I'm a big Abe fan, and I was really, really rooting for you and SHEILA. Abe really deserves some love.
Yeah, that was really kind of a happy accident, that pairing, and how well everybody felt about it. I was very pleased with that.
It was so sweet. But I have a question that I've been wanting to ask you for, I guess, years now. The fact that Theo has autism, that early on when he was born and growing, the writers decided to create this character with autism. What did you know about autism before that happened, and how did you prepare to play Abe in an authentic way as a parent of an autistic child?
Well, I knew very little. I think like a lot of people, we know the words, we know sort of essentially what autism is about. Even the medical community is still unsure of what causes it. And fortunately, there are always new and different treatments that come up. The numbers have grown. People are unsure whether the numbers have grown because we know what it is. In a lot of ways, we can recognize the symptoms of autism, in which, 10 years ago, we knew less. So I decided that I had to find out as much as I could. And as I do with everything else, at first I started with reading as much as I could find on the internet, as much as I could find in the printed word, which I enjoy reading still. And also being close with organizations like Autism Speaks and other organizations, and talking to people that I know who have relatives, sometimes children, sometimes other relatives, sometimes young children, others grown children that have autism. And because I wanted to know how they dealt with each one of those, what were the stresses on them, because we're a dramatic show. So we're going to deal with the stresses more than we're going to deal with other things. And Joy's comparatively easy to play because it's Joy. So who doesn't know how to embrace that? The stresses and the strains and the sadnesses and the depressions, and all of that become much more nuanced and much more difficult. And there's so many more levels to those. And so you want to make sure that you are showing the respect to the parents and the others, both the adults and the children who have autism, and how they can deal with it. And that was a pleasure. I love researching a role. I remember I rode around with the police, actually my early days of Abe, and even went to the FBI Academy for an extended 4-day weekend, which was invaluable. And I loved all of that.
We've had a wonderful hour. You've just shared such wonderful things. Are you guys let's all give him a really big thank you. So Pierce, if you can unmute everyone, we can give him a crazy shout out for the day.
Oh, well, I'll bring up the big screen then. Well, thank you so much. Boy, what a great way to spend an hour. Just give me a call, let me know. I'll come join you in your backyards or your kitchens or wherever you are.
Thank you so much, James.
Take care.
I found
Thanks
this
to
James, right before
look at
this,
that.
I found this. So I want to show you if I had a chance.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Who's that guy?
very cool.
With a
That was the
recipe
old,
and everything.
That's wonderful.
Awesome.
That's wonderful. Oh, that's the
Better
relaxation
living
book. Yeah,
Yeah.
the living book.
Better
Exactly.
Living. I got it signed from a few cast members in New York at Barnes and Noble.
Oh, that's great.
And
That's
we
great.
just have to spotlight Pam's mask real quick here.
Oh,
I
I love that.
Great
I
mask.
love that. That is
Oh my God.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
I may have to
really
get some
cool.
of those for a Christmas present. To me, not to me. Don't send them. Please don't send them to me as a Christmas present, but for other people.
Well, thanks to
Thank you.
all of our Soap Hub insiders. Thanks to James Reynolds. This has been absolutely wonderful. And we'll see you all next time.
All right.
So much. Thank you.